What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 podcast. Happy Friday, May 31st, and this is Season 4, Episode 16 of the F1 podcast. And we will be covering the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, this weekend's episode will be much shorter, where I will be providing my comments and my take of this past weekend's race, while Andrew is going to be providing some 15 minutes comments as well. Charles Leclerc has finally taken victory in Monaco. This past weekend, he won the Monaco Grand Prix, enjoying a most easy drive in front of his home fans despite the early drama playing out at the start of the lap. His first home victory and the first Monégasque driver since Louis Chiron in 1931 to win his home Grand Prix, as well as the first Monégasque driver to win the Monaco Grand Prix as a Formula One World Championship. This is the first race since the 2022 Austrian Grand Prix, ending a run of somewhat of 39 races without standing on top of the podium. And mind you, we've talked about this time and time again, that he is a really good driver and he deserves to be winning races. However, luck has definitely not been on his side. I think you could just see the excitement in him this weekend, and apparently he was crying towards the end of the race and getting emotional because I think this was a big deal to win his home race. And if you listen to, I think it was Carlo Vannitti call of his win, a casa tua, Charles, a casa tua, Charles, at your home, Charles, like really goes to show. And I mean, you could just see it within the fans, within, the staff, even the Monégasque royal family, I believe it was. Like, it meant, so much to him, and it was, kudos. I mean, unfortunately, there was not much overtaking. As we've talked about how Monaco and how big the cars are, I think the amount of overtakes that happened this weekend was, half of what happened in Las Vegas, and also, basically, how the grid started on the weekend on Sunday's race from 1 to 10. None of those positions changed. So, a couple of takeaways that I found that this weekend is we're starting to have a competitive Constructors' Championship. I mean, think about it. The 2024 season has already seen 4 different drivers winning races, and this has allowed them to capitalize on Red Bull's Sergio Perez's I wouldn't say terrible, but difficult qualifying, and has opened up the space for drivers to compete against Max Verstappen. The Ferrari driver kept his cool and remained ahead of his rivals to take his first win on the streets of Monte Carlo. And, this is his best victory here since P4. I think he crossed the line 7 seconds ahead of Oscar Piastri, who put in a really well drive for the McLarens, despite a late charge from Carlos Sainz. And I think that was also really cool to see Carlos Sainz celebrating with Leclerc on the podium. And making it a double Ferrari podium with a third place, so kudos to him. Leclerc now sits back 31 points from Max Verstappen heading into Canada this weekend, and I think Red Bull only has less than 30-point lead in the Constructors. So, I mean, I think that Red Bull, a track like the Circuit Villeneuve in Montreal, will benefit a team like Red Bull, but I mean, with Ferrari looking good, with McLaren looking good, in good races from all of them this weekend, anything can happen really going forward in Canada. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for other teams on the grid and what is going on in Alpine. And we've talked about the struggles that Alpine has been having all season, but this was technically a weekend to forget, especially for Esteban Ocon. He collided with his teammate on the first, going into the tunnel, which is kind of really, it was quite stupid because they were running 10th and 11th respectively. Pierre Gasly went on to save that point, but throughout, despite getting hit by Ocon, but there was even discussions, which I think have now been squashed, where Esteban Ocon could potentially be benched for the Canadian Grand Prix. Their team boss, Bruno Famin, was furious, telling French broadcaster, "It's sad that this kind of incident, it's exactly what we didn't want to see, and there will be appropriate consequences." Ocon attempted to dive into the inside of Gasly through Portier corner, and the two collided with Ocon's car launched into the air before crashing back down. I mean, I've talked about this multiple times where like I just don't really think that this team is going to do well with both two French drivers for a French team. Like somebody is going to want to be number one at Alpine, and it'll be very hard to kind of see how the rest of this will go through. And look, maybe this is a period where Jack Doohan will step in for Canada. I mean, you never know. It's still early. Like we still got a week and a half to go. I mean, things could happen. We don't know. I mean, I think he is set to serve a 5-place grid penalty for that collision. And both the drivers are in contract years. And sorry, it was actually 24 points separate Ferrari and Red Bull in the constructors now. So like, I don't know why they're really doing these things in the middle of the season. Like, I think they need to sit both the drivers down and say, look, like if you're gonna keep doing this, like someone needs to be held responsible. I think some also spots to highlight from this past weekend's race was Oscar Piastri, one of his strongest weekends of his career. Coming P2 and, could have potentially challenged Leclerc a little bit, but, this second ties his career best finish and gave McLaren their best results in Monaco since Lewis Hamilton won the race in 2008. Carlos Sainz, already talked to him. He had a great weekend as well. Yuki Tsunoda continued his maturity race or his leadership experience that he's determined. He outqualified his teammate again, securing his 6th top 10 start in the last 7 races. And then I'm just trying to see who else. Some notes. Alex Albon getting the Williams into the points, which was a big win for them. And you know what? I think Andrew Cleary's got some other comments that he wants to talk about this. But overall, it might have not been the most exciting in terms of racing this weekend. But I think there's some key moments, and I think that's what Andrew will try to explain here in this second part of this week's episode. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Andrew.
What's up, everybody? It is Andrew Cleary here from the F1 podcast on season 4, episode 16. Following Ricci's overall synopsis or analysis of the Monaco Grand Prix, I'd just like to provide some of my additional comments on the overall race. But first, just want to echo Ricci's comments on a massive congratulations to Charles Leclerc. The man finally has the monkey off his back, so to speak, and has broken the curse of Monaco in his home GP. First Monégasque to win the Monaco Grand Prix in the 70th edition of the F1 or the Monaco Grand Prix in F1. Just incredible sights to see, the fans, the streets going nuts for Charles Leclerc. And honestly, it's just such a nice to see such a massive weight off his shoulders now that he's been able to fulfill a childhood dream of winning in the streets of Monaco, where he grew up, and was quite, magical. Some might say, how can you not get romantic about F1? It's truly that was the case, especially, seeing how previous years he's crashed out of races. He started on pole. This is the 3rd time starting on pole. First time he could not start because he, broke his gearbox in qualifying in 2021. 2022 he started on pole, but then a really poor call by Xavi cost him the win in the race there. But finally, with the right strategist, with the right tenacity, he was able to find it deep inside him and effectively break those demons, which was really great to see. So a massive congratulations to Charles Leclerc. Super happy for you, man, and you totally deserve it. Otherwise, I wanted to talk to you about Haas overall, because I've been a big proponent of this kind of overall question with regards to K-Mag, and kind of his antics in the past few races and Grand Prix, and just to see this weekend, turn to incident lap 1 with Checo. Checo is way ahead, and he's kind of veering K-Mag into that wall. But K-Mag has to understand that there is legit no gap to go for that. So you have to do back off a little bit, get in behind, and then race back up Beau Rivage and try and overtake, maybe going into Casino Square at that point. He just dive bombed it into the back of his car, creating a catastrophic mess. I don't know if anybody's seen the videos online from the grandstands or just from outside the stands where the media were along that part of Beau Rivage. But oh my goodness, was Checo's car just destroyed? Like the only thing left was the monocoque and the crash structure of the car, pretty much. And that is a $2.4 million bill to Red Bull, which has massive implications down the road when you think about it, because that is $2.4 million out of your development budget. And based on what we've seen, Red Bull are going to need those end of year updates if they want to stay well ahead of the other teams. And right now, we have Ferrari, McLaren creeping back in to make this a true title fight potentially. And, that collision may make or break future developments down the road where Ferrari and McLaren will have the upper hand on Red Bull. So it has made for a really interesting season, but it's just another careless incident, in my opinion, that's created by K-Mag. And the fact that it wasn't even like penalized nor even like further investigated by the stewards is mind-boggling, considering some of the stuff that they're going to give. I think Ocon a free place penalty based on his crash, or maybe I'm wrong there from what I heard, but it's a weird part of Beau Rivage, right? Because it kind of, the line is straight, but based on the way the road goes up the hill, there are some dips and bends, right? And I thought it was just a bit of an idiotic move to go 3 wide up Beau Rivage at the start of the race, especially when there's 78 laps left to, potentially overtake on strategy, preserve tires, as we did see a lot of that, right? Preserving tires, just so that there could be then a strategy made for that particular driver. So there was plenty of opportunities to have that potential overtake, especially, in the top 10, we didn't see that as much, but P11 through P20, we did see some opportunities where there was some shifting going on and some fun overtakes too. But the 3 wide going into Beau Rivage and knowing that goes to the corner, and not only does he take out Checo, he takes out his own teammate, Nico Hulkenberg. And even Nico on the radio, you could hear it, said that was just not the right decision, not the correct call at that point in the race. And which was kind of mind-boggling and shocking to me is that incident did not require any further action from the stewards, which I just think is blasphemous, because K-Mag, I know he's 3 up the hill, and I know it's just that created so much damage. It took out not only a Red Bull, it took out both Haas cars. Created a red flag incident, and it was dangerous. Like it was a dangerous incident going 3 wide like that. And you always have to pitch safety, right? Safety is the #1 priority of F1, of course. And to me, that just was not a safe maneuver and should be penalized. For that, the stewards have to give the book down to K-Mag and say this is unacceptable. Way too many penalty points already this season, and he deserves a couple more, and for that, a 1 race ban. But they didn't seem to do it. So, it just, again, it questions the consistency of the F1 stewards in that case. But overall, did K-Mag deserve a race ban for the incident, Checo and Nico? I personally think he does. Please let us know what you think also. Also want to talk about my team, Aston Martin. Oh boy, a weekend to forget, in my opinion. Fernando Alonso finishing P11 only because of Sergio Perez, Nico Hulkenberg, and Kevin Magnussen retiring, and Ocon retiring due to collisions, and Lance Stroll actually dropping back a spot from P13 to P14, both finishing 2 laps down to the field. I think this weekend was a very telling sign of the direction that Aston Martin are going. And it's backwards. When you compare last year at this point of the year, Fernando was vying for podium after podium. He almost had a chance to win Monaco if it wasn't for a bad strategy in terms of the tire selection. I believe it was before the rain came last year in 2023. But it is a far cry from where we are now because we are just scraping for potential points. And for a team that's put a lot of money in investments into new infrastructure and a new facility, or so far, this doesn't seem like money well spent at this point because every time we now see, or even saying every time we now see quote unquote Aston Martin bringing upgrades to the car to a certain Grand Prix, they decrease. It's like a decline in performance for them. And at what point does Lawrence Stroll put his foot down and say, "Look, something has to change. Personnel need to change." And I don't think it's more so a driver right now in terms of obviously there's obviously better options than Lance Stroll to the field, but Fernando's struggling in the car too. So it's clearly an issue with the car. And that has to do with development. And if they're not meeting their development targets, if they're not, correctly utilizing the wind tunnel, are they reading the data incorrectly? They have to do a diagnostic review of what's going on and find the problem and fix it, because otherwise it is just going to be wasting money and they're not going to be competitive. For someone who says, I always win in the industry that I'm in, Lawrence, you haven't won shit. You need to start getting involved, and making sure that your money is well spent with regards to these facilities, with regards to personnel, and with regards to driver selection, because this is not the direction Aston Martin should be going if they're going to be wanting to win championships in the coming years. Mercedes, it was interesting this weekend because we had another comment of Russell. I mean, Russell made it 7-1 in the qualifying against Hamilton this season. And Hamilton made an interesting comment about, I don't anticipate being ahead of George in qualifying, particularly this year, but we've just got to keep pushing and the races are strong. Hamilton said, while pointing out to upgrades that Russell had been given, which then Toto Wolff commented back saying it, all drivers are a bit skeptical at times. I think as a team, we demonstrated that even in the most tense competitions between teammates, you're always trying to balance it right and be transparent and fair. I can understand as a driver, you want the best out of yourself and the team. And sometimes when it's going against you, you question it. I find it funny. Lewis, it is what it is. You're leaving next season. You're leaving this at the end of the season. So obviously they're going to give the upgrades to the driver that is going to be staying term with the team. And this is the unfortunate political bullshit that you're going to have to deal with for this coming year, based on the timing that you made your decision. They're not going to want to give you trade secrets when you go off to Ferrari, no matter how long you've been there, no matter what you've done what you've done for the team. Like you've driven them to 6 world championships, drivers wise, 7 or 8 constructors championships. You've done a tremendous amount. But the problem is when we live in the now time, in the present, they're not going to want to provide any potential trade secrets over to you carrying off to Ferrari, right? It's just the nature of the business, right? It's competitive. You don't want to lose any potentially competitive edges between teams. So unfortunately, that's the way it's going to go, mate. And you're just going to have to stick it out, unfortunately, for this season. And just know that you're going to a team that is ahead of Mercedes in terms of development right now. And just know that you can see like Charles winning, Sainz providing strong performances in the Ferrari. That will be you next season. And knowing that knowing your overall driver's racecraft awareness, expertise, experience, you have the potential to win a few more races in that Ferrari and maybe challenge for a World Drivers' Championship in that case. Speaking of like kind of overall Monaco, there was a fun interview at the end of the race with Max and George. Max saying it was just so boring out there because truthfully, it became a race where there was 4 different races in the race, right? If you saw like the map at one point in terms of where everybody was, we had our top 4 section with regards to Leclerc, Piastri, Lando and Sainz battling. Then you kind of had your midfield pack, right, with regards to Russell and Verstappen and Hamilton battling each other. And then you had Yuki, Albon and Gasly kind of fighting. And then you had Fernando and everybody else behind him at that point. And it was just it's a battle of tire strategy nowadays when it comes down to Monaco, right, on Sunday. Cars are too big, to overtake, they're too heavy to overtake, right? So if F1 wants to if they want to improve racing on Sunday in Monaco so that it doesn't just become a showcase, it becomes, an actual race. They're they're gonna have to find some opportunities to do some track improvements, or improvements to the overall requirements in the strategy. I know that Max was joking, and George was joking too, that he had like 5 mandatory pit stops, a nap, maybe a tea break or a coffee break at one point too. But I think there can be opportunities to improve the track, mainly considering one, I don't know how dangerous it would be, but create a DRS zone in the tunnel. And then instead of having that chicane at the end of the bottom of the tunnel that kind of goes around into the swimming pool, let that go straight away. And maybe that will present some sweet opportunities for overtaking. Yes, it's probably a little dangerous based on how narrow the streets are, but that is pretty wide down at the bottom of that, where that chicane area is, at the bottom of the hill past the tunnel. And I think that might be a great spot for overtaking there too. And not only just having one, you're adding a second DRS zone to Monaco. And with that, I know there'll be some reduction in the overall lap distance as well, just based on the straight and how to go to chicane. You can add a few more laps to Monaco, which then present further opportunities for these overtaking there. So, maybe there is opportunities to enhance the overall spectacle of there. I don't see F1 reducing the car's, size structure, right? And kind of maybe they have to do a mandatory refueling at one point. I don't think they'll ever do it again, but I don't see the car regulations obviously changing in terms of size in that case. So you have to do something to the track in order to make it more than a showcase on Sunday again. Those are my overall thoughts of the Monaco Grand Prix, but also, that Sunday with Monaco Grand Prix, it was a racing fan's dream, because you had Monaco Grand Prix in the morning, where we were in Canada, followed by the IndyCar's Indy 500, which to me is a spectacle in itself and something that I would love to go see one day. They had it had to do with a 4-hour weather delay, but they were able to get all 200 laps in. And if you've ever seen like an F1 style car, like a Dallara chassis, go around a track at like 222 miles an hour and doing some insane overtaking in the process, it's the Indy 500 in a nutshell. And my goodness, was it a spectacle to watch. Congratulations to Joseph Newgarden for winning the Indy 500. He's the first person to win back-to-back Indy 500 since Helio Castroneves 2000 and 2001. And what I also love about the Indy 500 is the trophy that is presented to the racers at the end of the race. The Borg Warner Trophy is presented to the winner of Indianapolis 500, and the trophy is this massive, I think 5-foot structure, but 6-foot structure. But what it has the heads of all the recent winners of the faces carved in to the trophy, plus the name. It is quite a spectacle in terms of a trophy, and honestly, probably one of the most beautiful trophies that I've seen in all of racing, just based on the overall history and the kind of the awe of the trophy itself. So congratulations, Joseph Newgarden. Won me some money this weekend too. It was plus 650 to win. Thank you, everybody. It was great. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts on the Monaco Grand Prix. Wanted a huge shout out again to Joseph Newgarden for the winning the Indy 500. Going into Canada next week, we're gonna have some fun things planned on social media. John and Eric are going to be at the race. Unfortunately, I cannot be there, but my kind of overall questions going in to the Canadian GP is, do Red Bull now have a real challenge on their hands? Because based on Monaco, it's going to be a similar idea to Canada. Similar in terms of street circuit, there'll be more overtaking opportunities there, but Red Bull are going to have a real fight on their hands come midway through the season. And this might become one of the greater seasons in recent memory of F1 if we have this kind of development structure going. So lots of questions to be answered coming to Canadian GP in terms of that overall challenge. And I'm going to let Ricci do the conclusion.
Thanks, Andrew. We really appreciate your comments for this weekend's past week. Thanks, Andrew. We really appreciate your comments of this past weekend's race. As previously mentioned, we got Canada next weekend. We're really excited to be going. We got some fun stuff planned, so make sure you tune into our social media channels. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, and Twitch. And so make sure to follow the F1 podcast. We are slowly getting to 1,000 followers on Instagram, so make sure to follow us at f1.podcast. And overall, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We're going to get the gang back shortly, hopefully before the weekend. And for those that are attending the Canadian Grand Prix, we will see you in Montreal.